Hello, hello, hello. Welcome.
Hello,
It's a pleasure
hello.
to be here again. We- Okay, now it's okay. So, welcome to our second show, Epic Understanding. So, Erika, hello, how are you? Let me bring you to the
Hi, how are
spotlight.
you?
I will ask you to talk a little bit about the project and then to introduce our lovely guests for today. Is that okay?
That sounds good. So, welcome back to Epic Understanding That Matters. I am your host, Erika Atkins. And what we've done here at Epic Understanding is, basically try to take today's issues and give a deeper understanding, give a platform where we can have real conversation that creates different behaviors and also create voices in the community that can be a thought leader so that we can empower one to create change. And today we have Mr. Andrew Roby. He is a corporate event planner. Um, to I'm going to I should say to the stars, but to the stars of corporations. You can find his work in Forbes magazine, CNN, Fox News, and so if you're looking for an event planner, please stop in and see his work, and then see if you can get an appointment with him. How about that? Exactly. And then we also have Jerry Foxhoven, and he is actually the former director of Iowa's Human Services. And then we have our resident correspondent for health. She's actually our expert on deck, Miss Kim Ali. And she is always full of experience of giving us how all of these events affect patient care or just affect us as humans. So I'm not sure if the community was able to hear or see that first video for Lee Adwater's community. Were you able to hear that video? Guess, did you hear it?
No,
I did not. I
unfortunately
couldn't
not.
hear it. No.
Okay, so let's try to play that again because it really is a foundation of where we're beginning our talk today. What we're doing is connecting the idea of systematic racism and white grievance. We're connecting those two ideas because, in all actuality, they are connected and it's a big part of the puzzle. So let's uh, review that video again.
Okay, let, let, let me share it again. Is there some advertisement there? We should wait a little.
Right, and we don't see it, Marco. We don't see it. Are you seeing it, family?
No.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
So we're not seeing it. Okay, it's coming up, and hopefully we'll be able to hear it.
You can hear it?
It's not. There's no sound as of yet, but I think Lee is not talking. We'll find out in a moment.
Can you?
No,
Oh.
we cannot hear it.
So I'm gonna pass you the link, Erica, through LinkedIn message, and
Uh
let's
huh.
try. Let's try with you.
That sounds good. But in the meantime, I'll ask the group here. would you say there is a connection between white grievance and systematic racism? I'll throw it to you, Jerry.
Well, I think it's an excuse, and so I don't think there's white grievance that justifies the racism, whether it's systemic or overt, but I think it's used as an excuse, and it's a way to bait people. And I think we're seeing that by the leadership of the United States right now, our current president, who uses this grievance of white people. Gee, we're losing out on things to really rise up both overt and systemic racism, and it's extremely concerning, because you have literally a president who's at least reportedly a billionaire, who tells his fans that he's a victim, that he's constantly being mistreated.
Okay, so not that it's not that it's not an excuse, but perhaps I don't know if people believe that there is a such thing as white grievance in the first place.
Well, I think that perhaps they may not officially see it, but it is why we have systemic racism to begin with. The whole purpose of, white grievances is just, it's that victimization that we have, or white people have, to say, okay, I feel that a sense of power is being taken away from me, and I feel that I'm being neglected in whatever the situation may be, and therefore I am going to establish protocols, laws, and rules to put in place to ensure that I no longer feel a particular way. If I go out and I say, man, I'm tired of people breaking into my house, I have the ability to either move or put in a security system, get a guard dog or something like that. And those particular things, the guard dog, the security system, are pretty much tools to hinder someone from breaking into your home. But the same concept can be afforded to what white people have done when it comes to race and racism. Systemic racism is just putting so many practices in place because of a preconceived notion that people of color, Black people, are out to really eliminate or even remove the amount of power that they have, and that necessarily isn't the case.
Absolutely. I think it comes from an idea of scarcity. In other words, there's only so much pie, and if I give you a piece of the power pie, then a piece of my power pie is taken away.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
Kim,
exactly.
let us hear your voice.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what you said about the scarcity mindset, a lot of it is just lack of education. I believe Caucasians do see us advancing. We are getting more education. We are starting businesses. We are in the corporate setting. And I believe it is that fear, oh my God, they're taking over. But in hindsight, Caucasians still have more privilege than we do. And that's what the whole Black Lives Matter movement is about. It's just expressing our voice for equity.
Okay, so if that is the case, and that's what we believe is true, let's get some backing on that, because the reality is, one might say, you know what, this is all just talk, so to speak. I am not aware of any policy or practice that actually is holding Black people back. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen and share an initial plan that was put in place to basically to hold the blackface back. And here we go. Let's try to get this going. See if technology is our friend, right? Are you seeing that?
Not
No.
yet.
Are you? Nope, not yet.
No, we just see you.
You just see me?
Yeah.
Let's see how smart I am.
There we see.
How's that? All right.
Yay.
Here's how I would approach that issue as a statistician. Or no, as a psychologist, which I'm not. Is how abstract you handle the race. In other words, you start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1970, that backstory, you say stuff like fourth person, states' rights and all that stuff. And you get to start abstract now. You're talking about cutting practice and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of it is blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying, we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing. And a hell of a lot more abstract than this. So any way you look at it, the race is coming on the back burner.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just acknowledge that initially, when I saw that video, it was extremely hard for me to hear. I'm not sure how you feel about it, but I was just blown back and taken away that there was actually a plot, a plan to connect this idea of hatred with the idea of process. And family, we have just had join us Tony Alexander. He is our diversity and inclusion expert. And so I'm going to throw it to him and ask for his feedback on that particular video.
Well, extremely difficult to watch and hear. But for me, what can you truly expect from someone who wrote the book, The Dirtiest of All Dirty of Politics, right? So, for that, that when we talk about systemic racism and those types of things, it is very difficult to see that there was a plot actually put in place. And for me, it was very eye-opening, and I'm sure very sobering for a lot of people to see that the things that we've seen over the years weren't necessarily made up in our minds. It wasn't made up in our heads, right? So to be able to surround yourself with someone who strategically plans to hold or oppression of a particular race back is very disheartening. Then I have to look at the circle of people that surrounds him. So, for that, he worked with many presidents in his term or during their term. So you have to look at all of the things that happened. And I'm just going to point one thing out that really sticks out for me. And this could be a little bit off of the subject, but when we look at that, and one part we don't hear is the cost of a slave in 716 was $1,200. So I'm just going to let people put that math out there and think about $1,200 and having a check signed and saying bought and sold. So we haven't come far, right? We keep talking but there's so many blocks and barriers. We're having difficulty getting to the table. And if we continue to have people in high power places such as these and not enough advocates like ourselves, we'll continue to find that we'll get further and further behind. And so, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it starts with the head. It starts with leadership. And everything lands and falls on leadership. And if you look at it, leadership is caught. It's not taught. People always say, well, you can teach leadership. But no, you judge people or you go by people by their actions. And so, you know, when we look at this particular video, you are the company that you keep. And so therefore, until we can pull it up by the roots, that's why we call it systemic, then we're going to constantly have these type of barriers and people that are in the place where we are being oppressed. So we cannot let this conversation stop. I will not let it stop. And again, it was just mind-boggling to hear that. It took 15 years for them to actually do that audio recording, and it was for a reason, because you know what's done in the dark will come to light. I'm sure we're going to have some more of this later in the session, but very again difficult to watch, and it makes me want to do even more.
Okay, that sounds really good, but my challenge to everyone in the dais is to answer this question. That was way back then. What makes you think it's valid now? Andrew, tell us, why is that valid now? That was back then.
I mean, it was back then, but we have seen just the very moment that we're in right now with I call it a virus that we're going through right now. Not COVID-19, but police brutality and over policing into marginalized communities. We're seeing that right now, where systems that have been built in place are meant to harm and diminish people of color, and in particular Black people. So yes, that mentality, and when we think of the mindset, we have to think of how long people, especially in Congress, are in positions to cause or to inflict pain upon people of color and Black people. It's not like a presidency where you are in for 4 years and perhaps 8 years. Members of Congress can be re-elected, and they are like, we have people that are in positions even till today that are well in age, that have been in their position for decades, if not, years. And the same mentality has been used in order to create laws, in order to continue to pursue systemic racism that we see today. So yeah, that may have been however many years ago, but the mindset of so many people in positions of power remain the same. It just has a different face to it. And like he was saying in the video, you just put a different word to it. You just described it a different way to try to mask what it is that you're doing, to try to make it more, politically correct. But the mindset continues to carry on every agenda that it has already built to keep Black people and people of color in an oppressed state. So it's still here.
Kim, do you think it's a part of today's society?
Absolutely. People of that generation taught those same ideologies to their children. And those children are our doctors, they are our lawyers, they are our judges, they are our loan officers when we try to go get mortgages. And so instead of it being outright blatant like it was in the 50s or 60s, now it's more strategic and systemic. So that video is still very relevant today.
Yeah.
Now, Jerry, earlier you said that this was actually part of the White House agenda. Do you believe that it is just that blatant today, or do you believe that perhaps he's just trying to get a good job done?
No, I think it's pretty blatant today, and I'm not sure which is worse, when it's blatant and everybody can see it, or when it's hidden and people can't. But to your question of, is it still going on today? The numbers prove it's still going on, and it can't just be a coincidence that people of color, their kids are expelled from school more often. It's not a coincidence that people of color are incarcerated. It's not a coincidence that people of color, even with the same income and the same credit, end up with mortgages that have higher interest rates than white people. I mean, if you look at all the numbers across the board, this just does not happen by chance. And it's just consistent. Even people with healthcare issues are treated differently. The numbers show that a person of color who goes into the emergency room with a heart attack gets different treatment than people that are white. Across the board, the numbers show that. And so it's very hard not to see that this is still there. What Atwater is really saying is, that people who want it to be there and are happy with it being there, they just have to hide how they say it. And let's not say it's because of color. Let's say it's because, for instance, when you do profiling, let's not say it's because they're black. Let's say it's because it's an area of the city where the crime is. Let's use different language to try to disassociate it with race, but it is. And the numbers just show it again and again and again.
So it's intentionally hidden. I would imagine that there is someone out there that is saying, you know what, I get you and I get your statistics, but that is not the nature of the White House today, and Donald Trump's policies are really fair for everyone. But I am going to show us a video that goes back to when he was candidate Donald Trump and who was fueling his candidacy and where his candidacy came from. So let's just take a closer look to see where his candidacy and his popularity came from.
Grievance in the Republican Party. That's the subject of this evening's talk.
Can we hear
Hi,
that?
Riley. Thanks for watching us tonight. Grievance in the Republican Party. That is the subject of this evening's talking points memo. All polls say the same thing. Donald Trump's rise is being fueled largely by white men who are both angry and furiously angry with both political parties. At this point, 47% of them say they will not vote for Donald Trump, according to a Wall Street Journal NBC poll. So it's the guys who have catapulted the candidate to the top of the Republican primary pack. According to the Washington Post, Donald Trump is favored by 50% of Republican voters who make less than $50,000 a year, most of them men. Also, Mr. Trump is supported by just 32% of Republicans who have college degrees, according to polling from 20 Republican primary states. So you can see that Trump support is largely coming from working-class white men who feel aggrieved. Now, we've seen this before in America. A black grievance industry is a powerful force. That group sells the notion that most problems in the African-American precincts are caused by white people and historical oppression. While the media gives that view a lot of attention, most African-Americans themselves reject the propaganda. A recent study by the Kaiser Family Foundation says 61% of American blacks believe the breakdown of the African-American family is a major reason for the economic deprivation and social problems in the black community. Now, on the white side, the issue is similar. Many white Americans believe that illegal immigration hurts their job prospects and are angered by changing neighborhoods and changing social patterns. Their refrain is often, "I want my country back." These voters are tired of seeing welfare doled out to people who are not motivated to succeed or even American citizens. They are angry that terrorism is not being contained. They see the Republican Party as largely cowardly in the face of political correctness. The white grievance crew also believes they are being oppressed economically and that nobody is looking out for them. Enter Donald Trump, who vividly reflects that anger and has criticized his own party for being weak. Now, both the black and the white grievance movements have some legitimate points. There's no question that in poor black neighborhoods, schools are generally deficient because the property tax base which supports the schools is low. So poor black kids not being educated as well as affluent children. That's true. On the white side, here's a very simple example. The Republican Party did not get behind case law, which would have harshly punished illegal alien felons who defy deportation. While GOP senators like Grassley, McCain, and Cruz did actively try to get case law passed, the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, did not. And in general, Republican politicians did not raise the flag on this issue. I mean, when you control both houses of Congress, as the Republicans did, you cannot get a just law like case law passed, there's a serious problem. Again, Trump is tapped into that chaos. Going forward, Mr. Trump's nomination not a lock. He's made serious mistakes and will have to win over millions of Americans who do not believe he is qualified. If you believe the polls, Mr. Trump is in for a rough day tomorrow in Wisconsin. That being said, the issue of white grievance not going away, and Trump will maintain a very low level of support. Many of his supporters, as I said, are furious. And if Mr. Trump does not get the nomination, the stay home factor in next November's vote is likely to be substantial. That's Mel. Now, the top story tonight, reaction joining us from Washington, Charles Krauhaus. Charles, where am I going wrong here?
Well, where do I start? Look, I think you make a lot of good points, but I think the larger point is not that this is a racial grievance. After all, when you're talking about the Republican electorate, you are starting from the premise that you're talking about whites. No candidate on the Republican side had major appeal to African Americans for a lot of historical reasons. It's a Democratic constituency. So we're starting by talking about the white population, by and large. And to me, the issue is not race, but class. As you mentioned, this has to do with people making less than $50,000 a year, people with less education than others. And to me, the central problem is a really deep historical one that neither party knows how to solve, that we have entered an information age, leaving behind the industrial age, and it is littered with people who don't fit. Look, think back 50% of Americans worked in agriculture. Today, that's 2%. And in fact, we produce more food. That means 48% of the population was thrown out of work during the 20th century. Now, they latched on because we entered the industrial age. They began working in factories. We don't have that kind of transition now. And we don't know how to solve the problem of the huge gap in income and opportunity between the more educated and the less educated.
All right.
So
That's true.
It's class much more than race.
Okay. But you see that same thing on the Democratic side as well.
I
it's
agree.
The same.
What say you? What say you? Do you think it is a class issue, or would you say it is a race issue, or both? There was so much that said in that, in that scene that, I'm almost chomping at the bit to unpack it.
Well, if I can start unpacking it, first I'm going to say it's an ignorance issue first, right? Because we need to be educated on it. And so this is why we're doing this platform for education. But to be able to say, I'll go back one. Black Americans didn't ask to come here, right? So, to say we want our country back, and I've seen that, and I've heard that. I've heard that plenty of times. So with the notion that we have two sides who feel that they are aggrieved or they're done wrong, how do you compare, 400 years of slavery to, let's say, minimum wage? As we spoke on our last conversation, we were brought here to do textiles in the North and we were agriculture in the South. We were never meant to be a part of the Constitution. So now that we have fought through the 1964 Civil Rights Act, what we've done is paved the way. Now, the issue comes in when I say ignorance is because we have a movement. This is what this is. This is a movement that will not stop. And one of the things that I constantly tell people who get upset when you watch on TV and you see the things, Black Lives Matter, and people are driving by and they're throwing the finger up and those types of things. For me, you should be glad you don't need a movement in 2020. You should be glad you do not need a movement. So therefore, think back to or try to place yourself in someone else's shoes. And we talked about, I did a conversation just coming up through corporate America and all of the roadblocks, the mental roadblocks, the physical roadblocks, the glass ceilings, the gatekeepers. All of those things were meant to keep us out of places, because now we were here, right? So guess what? We're not going to let it progress. So when we talk about the things like the rioting and the looting, and there's so many different things or different ways we can go with that. But at the end of the day, these things that are happening inside our communities, we cannot say that 61% belongs to us. We must own 61%. We're going to own our share. But at the same time, when we talk about pull yourself up by your bootstraps, well, that's kind of hard to do when you don't even have boots. And that's just kind of where it's all at, you know? We talk about doling out welfare. Well, explain to me what that means. Like, let's unpack that. What does doling out means? Because there's different families, different circumstances, that different things that happen. So with that, what systems or education pieces have you put in place? We also discussed about the low taxes inside these communities. So if people are not educated inside of the communities and they only can make $7.25 an hour or $10 an hour, and they have 3 kids, what else do you expect for them to do, right? So it's not doling out. They just need their fair share in a level playing field. So, you know, it was a very, again, sobering video, and it's sad to say in 2020, we're still talking about the same thing we talked about, you know, 40 or 50 years ago. But we're going to move past it, and it's going to be more than a conversation now. It's going to be to where we actually put action. And again, I'm thankful that these platforms are going out and we're getting so much support around it.
So let's attack that idea of taxes, because I would say schools are one of the only areas where we take the taxes of a particular community and we circle it back around only to that particular community. For instance, in any given neighborhood, we don't not fix those roads because it's a part of that community, right? So when it comes to schools, we take the tax dollars of that particular neighborhood and we circle it only within that neighborhood, instead of using the total tax base of the entire community to circle it back around. So the system is designed to undermine the education of those who are in that particular community. I don't want to take over. Jerry or Andrew, please speak on this matter.
If I can jump in, Iowa's kind of in a unique position because years and years and years ago, Iowa recognized that disparity that happens in education when you tie it all to property taxes. And so as a result of that, we have a statewide formula, and the state provides money per capita for the children. So it's basically balanced. That doesn't mean we don't have discrimination in education. We have one of the highest levels of kids being just expelled from school and so forth, but at least the funding is more level. But across the country, it's not at all because of what you talked about, Eric. You know, there are school districts in the United States that the what I would call the inner city, where the poor, mostly kids of color, where their funding, because of property tax being lower than the suburbs, for instance, where their kids per capita are getting about 40% of what kids are getting in a wealthier. Well, who would believe that you could fund education at less than half the level and that the kids would get the same quality of education? Nobody would believe that. And so I think that's a significant problem and a reflection of some of this, where people would try to say this isn't based upon race, and if it's not based upon race, you could change that. You could change it and not make it based on property taxes alone, like they did in Iowa, because you recognize there's a disparity there, and if you don't change it when you recognize the disparity, then it's intentional.
There we go. Andrew, I'm going to have you unpack, if you would, the idea that money is being doled out to Black families at a higher rate than to other racial groups.
I'm not sure who believes that, but I definitely do not believe that, and we see that happening in a number of situations, and I'll use food deserts as a example for this very thing. And if you don't know what a food desert is, for many marginalized communities, particularly people of color, Black people, when they go to a particular grocery store, they go to the grocery store and they're only limited to certain amount of food. A lot of the time, the food isn't nutritious in value, and it's not like, if I'm going to a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's, which I know is going to have a more higher level of nutrition and variety, and we can use that because of the fact that we're only looking at that community and believing that that community only has a certain amount of money in it, then we're only going to give them what we believe that they are actually capable of purchasing, which is lower quality food and other resources. So if that is the case, if it is the case of Black people or people of color that are actually getting more money to be able to do whatever it is that they need to do, then we wouldn't have situations like the food deserts, constantly living in our communities, because we would be able to sustain ourselves at higher levels. But when we look at it as well, and we look at gentrification, and we see how many people are pushed out of their communities and literally have to continue to find low-income communities because they can't afford to stay within these communities that they've been pushed out to and pay a higher level of rent or even mortgage for where they are. So it just baffles my mind to believe that Black people or people of color are being, given so much amounts of money. And when, we as Black people look at that and we're like, okay, well, where is this money at? Where is it coming from? I look at, just the whole COVID-19 aspect and how people are given $600 or even $1,200 stipends to last them for I don't know how long. Do we really believe that that's enough money to sustain families throughout this entire process? So I find that humorous to even say that that's possible.
I would say that you are exactly right. Jerry, I'm not going to put you on this spot to give us the exact statistic, but as the Director of Human Services, I'm sure you have a great bit of knowledge of what race is actually getting more of those tax dollars.
Sure.
When it comes to welfare.
So let me say this. When I was director of the Iowa Department of Human Services, one of the things I changed was when we did our budgetary report, and we'd look at each program in the department and say, who did we serve? I then made part of that as the average person that we're serving here looks like this. And it was always white. It was always white. It would be, whether it was food stamps, SNAP benefits, or subsidized childcare, or Medicaid, it'd be a 24-year-old white woman with 2 kids. It was always white, and we've never done that before. And part of that was because I wanted to break that stereotype of exactly what we've been talking about. These benefits are all set up for people of color. And the second thing I think it's really important for people to understand is that SNAP benefits. You know what the average monthly benefit for an individual is for SNAP benefits? $132. $132 a month. And for a family of 5, $262. Do you know you can't even come close to supporting your family? So I would say these people, sometimes meaning poor people, sometimes meaning people of color, they're not working because they want to get this benefit. Seriously? Even at minimum wage, $132 a month for food is nothing. They wouldn't turn down even a minimum wage job to be able to get $132 a month. And so the benefits are very, very low today. And most of the people receiving those benefits are white. They're not people of color. Now, people of color are overrepresented in terms of poverty. But we all know that a lot of that's for other reasons, both the systemic racism and also historically, as I talk to my white friends in this country and I say, what is the biggest piece of your family's wealth? Where is most of their money? You know what they say? In their home. In their home. And so, of course, that's where white people built up, they bought a home and it became worth more and more and more. But we had redlining and we had restrictions on housing, and because of redlining, those houses in that area didn't grow in value like they did in the white neighborhoods. And so as a result of that, of course, there's going to be more poverty among people of color, and then also the other aspects of racism, which make it harder for people of color to get jobs and to get paid for higher mortgages and so forth. All of that combines to make really higher poverty levels for people of color as well.
Absolutely. And so let's just call it a bottom line that it is a false narrative that people of color are receiving most welfare benefits. That is just a misnomer. It's factually incorrect. And if anybody's curious, I will tell you where all the welfare is actually going. And it's not to people, it's to corporations.
Right.
But that's another. But that's another.
We would say in Iowa, farmers get a lot of it too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They do get a lot of it in corporate farming.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it. So if you're wondering where your money is going, just look to the corporations and maybe a few farmers. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, Kim, I want to throw this particular question to you because what we're doing is talking about false narratives at this particular juncture. And in Bill O'Reilly's report, he said that Black grievance is built on the idea of broken families. Okay. That is what he said. But the reality is that the Black family has been intentionally broken. And can you speak to that matter for us, please?
Sure, definitely. Well, it started back from slavery. If you think historically, when the master would come and he would attack or rape the Black woman, the husband was powerless. He couldn't do anything. So can you imagine being raped by another man in front of your husband and your husband not being able to intervene? So that causes resentment over time. During slavery, families were sold to different plantations, so mothers weren't able to keep in contact with their children. Husbands weren't able to keep in touch with their wives. Then now we have slavery 100, 200 years later, and we have public assistance, which we just talked about. And a lot of people don't know that if you are a woman and you are receiving public assistance, you're not allowed to have a man in the house. So what does that do? That splits up families. Recently, African-American women, we're trailblazers. Like we have the most degrees, we own the most businesses, and our Black men, I won't say that they're struggling, but they aren't keeping up with Black women. And I believe that causes a lot of resentment as well. And it's built into the system. It's designed to keep families apart. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, we have Kivanote Mitchell. He says basically nothing is going to change until we get the baby boomers out of Congress. That's the bottom line. That's what he wants. I don't know if that's the full answer, but we do need to get the old mindset out of Congress.
Right. And that goes back to what I said earlier, is that we have so many people that are residents, like they literally are claiming domains in Congress because they've been there so long. I don't understand why we don't have the same restrictions on seats in Congress that we do on presidential candidates. And I think that we have to get to the point that we do see fresh minds in place, and that I love when we just went through this whole shakeup of having so many people or so many women and diverse women be a part of Congress. Like that was an incredible movement that we saw, and we need to continue to do that, because by us staying where we are, we cannot expect to have anything change. And going back to what Bill O'Reilly was saying in regards to Kate's case law. So the whole purpose of that law was because she, a 32-year-old woman, was walking along the a pier or something in San Francisco with her father, and she got shot by a illegal immigrant that had multiple felonies and was still they were looking after this particular person, and they sent this bill forward. And you know what most people said? They were like, this is a waste of resources. So we're trying to, it just baffles my mind that we're trying to protect human beings, but when it comes to protecting them, if it doesn't align with our particular narrative, then we don't want to fund it. And that's what, marginalized people, us people of color, are seeing time and time again because of people that are stuck in Congress that refuse to see the ever-changing sea of diversity that we're faced with every single day.
Oh my goodness, Andrew, you're going to get us all in trouble because you're going to make us talk about protecting people in the womb, but not wanting to protect them outside of the womb. Uh-oh.
but that's serious, and that's a point for what we see right now with Kamala Harris, as far as when she even inquired to our top officials on why is there rules about women and there's not rules about men. And when it comes to reproduction, we can't have it one way. It has to be a unified effort where it is equal to all. So we have to change that mindset. We really do.
And part of that is bringing life to a comment that you made earlier. We have Ellen Barton. She said that the numbers on food deserts are staggering. And it's been particularly noted during the era of COVID-19. And so that just goes to the idea that we want to protect these babies in the womb, and I celebrate that particular idea. But more importantly, when a woman is considering having that child or not, one of the things she's considering is, can I afford this child? And if we want to create a safe haven, if we want to, save more babies and lower the abortion rate, what we want to do is create a safe space. We don't want to have the baby come out and then starve it to death. That's torture.
Right.
That's a crazy idea, right? Well, I'm sure there is someone out there that is saying, okay, I'm going to give it to you. Maybe with our elected officials, there might be a problem, but in our other agencies like the Veterans Administration and the NEA, that really doesn't exist, and it's really kind of sparse. And so I just want to show and make a connection how it's spread all through our nation, and even in the areas of our armed forces. So I'm going to make a technology jump again, guys. I'm jumping into the technology pool again, family. Let's see how good I am. I think you can see that, and here we go.
Captain is under fire for making racial slurs on a Facebook Live. Scott Beckman has now resigned from the U.S. Naval Academy Alumni Association.
Not yet, Erika.
That's because
not showing.
It's not showing? Let's try it.
Hear it though.
Hold on.
Maggie, according to the family, this was an accidental
recording. Okay. There you go.
Yeah, spokesperson for the family said
that
Scott Beckman did not realize he was broadcasting the conversation.
Tonight,
okay, now it's okay.
For making racial slurs on a Facebook Live. Scott Beckman has now run the U.S. Naval Academy Alumni Association Board.
That's because he broadcast the conversation he was having with his wife, Nancy, on Facebook. News4Jack's reporter Maggie Lenz listened to the full recording. Maggie, according to the family, this was an accidental recording?
Yeah, a spokesperson for the family says that Scott Beckman did not realize he was broadcasting the conversation that he was having with his wife, Nancy, on Facebook Live. I listened to that recording. It goes on for about 30 minutes. And during it, you can hear both and Nancy Beckman make multiple racial slurs throughout it. The device recording the conversation is not aimed at anything, so we don't have any video of it, only audio. Scott and Nancy Bethman are at their home in Atlantic Beach. You can hear them watching TV, and the pair start making comments about the Black Lives Matter movement. Scott brings up how companies like American Airlines and Citibank have issued statements supporting Black Lives Matter.
I've gotten an email about how we're supporting, and we need to fix this problem, and you. Oh, if you work in my office and you're silent, we know where you stand. So all the white people have to say something nice to the black that works in the office. But the black don't get fired. It's bullshit.
The Jacksonville chapter of the Naval Academy Alumni Association confirmed on Facebook that Bethman has resigned from the board. Bethman served as the chapter treasurer and national trustee. In the recording, Nancy also refers to the black community and makes other racial slurs. The husband and wife talk about women and minority groups who serve in the military. She at one point seemingly warns her husband to be careful with what he says in public.
You better watch yourself on that board. I don't say anything, that's my point. I just said the white can't say anything. That's the point we're making here, Nancy.
In the beginning of the copy news for Jackson, Scott says the N-word. The video immediately led to an outcry on social media, many questioning if Scott Bethman's disease could have affected his job and board membership. The original video and Scott's Facebook page have since been deleted. Up tonight at 11, the apology we're hearing from the family on behalf of Scott and Sue, and also what the Alumni Association says it's doing to move forward. We're live. I'm Maggie Lorenz, Channel 4, the local station.
Well, gosh, I don't know. Do you think it affected some of his decision making?
Maybe just a little.
Yeah, I'm sure some people were denied promotions.
It's a little disturbing. It's beyond disturbing. Just to say, speaking as a vet, Andrew as well. It's it's very disturbing, right? And so these are the things that we as black men or black people, when we go into the workplace, that we have to go in with extra anxiety, right? Because there's always this stereotype. And one of the things, I'm kind of very candid. So, hey, if you don't want to speak to the lady at the front desk, then by all means, don't speak to her. Keep it moving. I'm sure it's not going to impact her day by you not speaking. But just to hear that type of rage and disgust based on a movement is very concerning. And this is something that has gone on for years. And when we talk about people's promotion and those types of things, me having friends in the military, I've heard those types of stories, where they would go to the board and be denied. So to hear this definitely tells me that it's there. It's there. It's not just in our schools. It's not just in our communities. It is running amok throughout our country, throughout the world. And I think if we unite more than divide, then we could find a way and a solution to just help our fellow man in general. But the first thing we need to do is people of color need to be put on an equal platform. We need to be put on the same playing field because we're already 2 steps behind. And so I've seen that in my personal career. So the story that I always tell people is that every time I was denied something, I had to go back and get 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees. And it was never enough. It was never enough. And as I watched, my white colleagues just zoom past me, I asked myself, when is enough going to be enough? And those are the things that led me to getting my law degree. Those are the things that led me to becoming a advocate, being out in the communities, being a resource, just helping, because if we don't help our fellow man, then we can't depend on our government or therefore lack of government to do so, because we have the same people that have been in places for the same years with the same concept, with the same mindset, who's going to constantly do the same thing. And I refuse to let myself or the next generation go through this for the next 400 years. So we're not going to relive this. And if we don't get people like this gentleman out of place, then we have a bigger problem. But also I want to add on to that is problems don't just fall out of the sky. They don't. So there's somewhere in there that this guy has been umpteen years with the military. You can't tell me that there hasn't been some indication, some type of investigation, some type of complaint that fell on deaf ears that continue to perpetuate the type of behavior that he exists. And there was no reason for his wife to say, be careful, because if that was the case, she would already have known that, okay, he doesn't speak this type of way. So it's a common conversation. And it's the same thing as we had with the Amy Cooper story. The only difference that is happening now versus what happened years ago is thank God for technology, because technology is really opening our eyes and letting us see the truth. So I would say tell America to stay woke, but we're woke. It's just now it's time for action. So that video really, it gets under my collar.
Okay. And Andrew, as a fellow veteran, I want to give you the floor. What's your thoughts on this matter?
I agree, and I'll tell you, and it's not just the military side, but I'm going to talk about the military side because that's my foundation and how I started. But when I was in the Army, I remember specifically my company commander not caring for me because I was literally the only Black non-commissioned officer with my position, and mind you, in that case, like, no one put me in that just to put me in there. I was NCO of the year for not only as a soldier, but also a soldier of the year and non-commissioned officer of the year. So I did the work. And I had the chance to meet presidents and foreign dignitaries and all that because of that. But at the same time, I fast-tracked. I was able to actually get to the level of staff sergeant within 5 years, which not many people are able to do. So in addition to all of that, I led my platoon and I was able to lead 157 soldiers to deployment and back. So it's not like I was just, waiting for handouts in order to be in the position that I was in. I was actively doing the work in order to say, look, this is who I am. This is what my capabilities are. But even with all of that, my company commander still thought of me as less than and singled me out constantly, even on deployment. Constantly singled me out about things that I had nothing was something that I did myself. It was always things that he created for me because I was that Black, I guess, leadership figure that he could signal out, and everyone else was white. And this happens all the time, especially for us in the event industry. And in our industry, we have 86% of the people in our industry are white. Of those, it is 73 or it's 73% that are white men. And because of that, we navigate ourselves as Black professionals in the sense that, one, we are capable and we have the certifications, we have the work that we have done in order to say that we are capable of doing whatever event that you throw our way. However, those with position of power, primarily white people, look down on us and say, well, this is a Black company, this is a minority company. They can't possibly be able to do what a white company does. They only have 4 or 5 people. That means they don't have the ability to do what we need to do. Not ever giving us the chance to prove them wrong. And so we see this constantly, navigating through life where people have this preconceived notion that, if it's a Black person, they're going to be less than, they're not going to be capable, they're not going to be qualified. So we're not going to waste our time even proving that this is actually the case. So we see it all the time, and it's definitely prominent in the military. I've been there, done that, and I could have wrote 2 or 3 novels about it already.
Mm-hmm. So I want to unpack this idea of the white people can't say anything. One of the most frustrating things that can happen to anybody. It really doesn't matter what color you are. Is that you feel as if you're losing your voice, that you feel as if you are losing your power. Jerry, I see you smiling over there. And so I'm bringing this up because I know this gentleman, he had just a visceral anger, but he was making a point. He was making a point about his pain. And what can we do with this feeling of neglect? What can we do with this feeling that something is being taken away? Because that's why there is a grievance in the first place. Quite honestly, I believe that a large majority of white grievance comes from this idea that I am not going to be able to survive. It's not necessarily hatred of the other, whether it be Black, Hispanic, Asian. It's more so about my ability to continue my life as I'm accustomed to it, and for my children to have something. So it's almost like an abusive protectionism. And so, Kim, I'm going to ask you to speak to that idea, and then Jerry, I'm going to come to you.
Right. Well, my first question would be, what do you feel like you're losing? In terms of illegal immigration, most jobs are held by legal immigrants because that's the only thing that they're qualified to do. And let's be honest, these are jobs that, quite frankly, most Americans do not want. So I guess, like, your initiative, Epic Understanding, what is this fear coming from? What do you feel like you're losing? You still make more money than minorities. You still own more homes than minorities. Your net worth is still more than most minorities. And I think once we really unpack and find out where the fear is coming from, then we can do some education. And then I think that's when collaboration comes together. So that's how I would address that scarcity mindset.
Okay. I'm going to answer that question with an idea that Tony brought to the table. Tony indicated that he had to get several degrees to gain his position in life. Okay, so there's that particular concept. What happened to the blue collar jobs is part of that particular idea. So there's an idea that I should be able to, as an American, as a real American, I am supposed to be able to go through high school and then go out and get a job that supports my family. So I think that is the pain point. Jerry, can you expand on those thoughts, please?
Sure. Although I'll tell you, Erika, you give him more credit than I do, the guy in the film, okay? First of all, I want to tell you this for probably a decade or so. When somebody starts a sentence with, this may be politically incorrect, but I stop them. I put my hands up and say, stop. Because whenever I hear that, it's followed up by something that's racist, sexist, homophobic, or something like that. So if that's what you're going to say, stop. And, they stop and then they don't say anything more because what they were going to say was either racist, sexist, or homophobic. So I think, first of all, white people need to be better about standing up and saying, I don't want to hear that. This guy said this to his wife, but he said it to other people too. And it's a responsibility for other white people to say, that's just not acceptable. And I don't want to hear that kind of talk. Secondly, I think that when you talk about the blue collar crimes being gone and so forth, or jobs being gone and so forth, I think part of it is this isn't just government that does it, it's industry too. We've reached a time now where it's a record in terms of the disparity of income between CEOs and that blue collar worker. And part of the way they are successful is to tell that blue collar worker, it's not our fault. I know you're making close to minimum wage or not even a livable wage, and I'm making $8 million a year. But that's not the problem. The problem is that person of color next to you, or that illegal immigrant, or whatever. And so shifting that blame and that focus creates among those people that Riley talked about being Trump's base, it creates this, oh, you're right, it's not my fault, and it's not that executive's fault, it's that person of color that's next. They're taking these things on me. And so I think that's an issue. The last thing I want to refer to is when he talked about he has to get 2 degrees instead of 1, and I'm totally with you. I get it. Some of my white friends back when Barack Obama was president had said, well, he's president, so see, that's all. We're all done with that now because a black person can achieve the highest office in the world. So you can do whatever you want to. And here's what I used to say to my friends when they'd say that. You know, for the average white person, if you define success as I can get a decent job, buy a home, and be able to pay my bills, have a decent life, okay? Then life is basically like an escalator. You get on it at the bottom and you ride it to the top and you'll get there. As long as you don't do something crazy and jump off of it, you'll get there, okay? But for a black person, life to achieve that is like the down escalator and you got to go up it. You don't just get to step on it and ride up it. You have to work a lot harder to get to that place. And then I said, then there comes a guy like Barack Obama comes along, who's a world-class sprinter, if we want to talk in those terms, rather than his intelligence and everything else. So he runs to the top of it, and we say, see, anybody could do that. And that's really an unfair advantage because Barack Obama could be successful with anybody, you know, I mean, and so to say that means any black person can be successful that way is really a false comparison.
Absolutely. I think that you made a wonderful analogy. Andrew cannot help himself over there. Andrew, what say you? What say you?
Well, I mean, Jerry, that was a great analogy, especially when it comes to President Barack Obama. I think that when he was elected, every white person, that especially in media, was like, boom, now black people have reached Mecca, I guess. They've reached that idea that they can do this. But one, we didn't even have to figure out how he even got to that point. But two, if we really want to talk about his presidency, we should also incorporate all the battles that he had to take while he was even in that position. And he got a whole lot more scrutiny going through that entire period than many other presidents before him. And the very notion to be like, okay, well, this is the end all be all for black people, they can all do this. That's not the case because every black person will continue to struggle. It is not just about Barack Obama and it being a one-time thing. We have to look at what is in place that is going to hurt and harm all people from being able to actually be a president or be a CEO of a company. We can't honestly believe that it's just this one person made it, so now everybody else is going to be able to make it. That's not the case. We know that people are going to work even harder to prevent us from even achieving that a second, a third, or fourth time. And that in itself is just so crazy. And yes, going up an escalator the wrong way is a lot of effort. And for black people, we've been doing that for 400 years. I want to be able to get a glass of water and stand on the escalator and drink that water and go to the top without making an effort. But we don't have that opportunity right now.
No.
Absolutely.
And if I can respond real quickly to that, you know, when Barack was first elected or was first got the nomination, was running, I have a neighbor who's, you know, very, very conservative and so forth. And he made some comment about, you know, Barack Obama and, you know, I'd like to see AIDS or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And so I said to him, you know, your son-in-law's a lawyer, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, I'm a lawyer, right? And I said, ask your son-in-law. Barack Obama was the editor-in-chief of the Harvard Law Review. That means he was at the very top of his class at Harvard. And I said to my friend, you know, I went to the Drake Law School. This is a long ways from Harvard. I'm not criticizing Drake, but it wasn't Harvard. And I said to him at the time, do you know what the editor-in-chief in class, the editor-in-chief what she's doing right now? And he said, no. I said, she's the Chief Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court. I mean, that means you're at the very top of your. So to have any question about Barack Obama being exceptional and not holding everybody to that level, you wouldn't hold every black to that level. He's exceptional. And to judge everybody by that is just really unfair.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I would imagine in listening to this conversation, there are still people out there going, you know, yeah, but this isn't in everyday culture. This isn't in everyday language. I think that you guys are mistaken about the kinds of things that are being talked about. And there isn't this secret culture or secret language that is calling people forth in order to behave this way. For that reason, I'm going to, take the technology challenge again, and I want to talk about dog whistles with us, because I think that's just a huge deal. So, family, are you seeing the screen for dog whistles?
Yes.
Yes or no? Yes. All right.
Yes, we're seeing it.
Good.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So tonight we're going to talk about dog whistles. We're running into them a lot all over the place, certainly on the Internet, even in government, and government seems powerless to stop it of any kind. I mean, if no government is best, then, well, maybe no government is best. Anyway, dog whistles are statements that give the speaker plausible deniability. They can say, oh, no, that's not what I meant. That is not what I meant. I didn't know. You're taking that the wrong way. And then they start to gaslight you. Look at you. You're seeing racist everywhere. It's not what I'm saying. It's crazy. But, even though they can deny it, a certain subset of people, well, they heard it and they know what it means, because it's a core belief of that ideology. It's something that really, really matters to that group. I use dog whistles all the time in my videos, constantly. I don't use racist dog whistles, but I use dog whistles to other groups. I used one already in this video. Now, when the average hears, if no government is best, then no government is best, what they hear is, there's no perfect government, right? To a certain subset of people, if no government is best, well, no government is best. It's a dog whistle to people who believe in a stateless society, because it's better not to have government. That's how dog whistles work. Odds are you didn't even hear that, but it was there. And there were people in these comment sections, I'm certain, that heard it. That's how they work. So first you have to be able to identify them. And some of them are very, very obvious, and we're going to use some of those as examples. But you treat them the same way you treat a racist joke. I don't get it. Explain it to me. And force them to drag it out and explain it. You focus on nothing else in that comment. When you see one or you hear one, you don't address anything else. You zero in on that dog whistle. I don't know. What is a globalist? Because then they have only a few options. They can pretend they don't know, which nobody on the Internet admits they don't know something, or they can come up with an alternate meaning, or they can own it. Those are the options. But either way, it doesn't matter if you don't let it go. You continually hammer on that one statement and get them to address that one thing. A really common one is, well, black people are responsible for a disproportionate amount of murders in the U.S. Okay. So why is that important? Well, I just said it, that they're responsible. So their skin tone makes them kill? Is that what you're saying? And you just force it, drag it out. I mean, that doesn't make sense. I mean, unless you're actually saying that black people are subhuman. I mean, that's certainly not what you're saying, right? And by this point, they can't gaslight you anymore. They can't pretend that's not what they're talking about. because they've already hit that. They've already gone far. You can expose them, and then you can expose the propaganda, because most of these dog whistles are like that. There's no nuance. They're very simple pillars, though. There's something that everybody in that community recognizes. And if you can destroy it, well, then not the person you're talking to, but everybody else in the comment section sees it. Everybody who heard that dog whistle, who might be starting to believe that, can start to identify it for the bunk that it is. You know, by that same data set, people with brown eyes are responsible for a disproportionate amount of murder. Should we base policy on that? Is that a reason to develop a prejudice? It's a spurious correlation. It obviously, skin tone or eye color doesn't relate to whether or not you're more likely to be a murderer. That's stupid. That's like saying your astrological sign determines whether or not you're going to be a killer. So you drag that out. And then you go further with it. And you point out that, you know, I mean, if you're going to use statistics, you at least need a complete data set. And this is a complete data set. It came from the Department of Justice. Yeah, but what are the statistics of? Clear murder cases. Not all murder cases. So it would actually stand to reason that the people that are better at crime are the people that aren't on it. Because, well, it only focuses on a very small group. Focuses on those that were clear, those cases. And get ready to not sleep at night. I know that because of CSI and shows like that, everybody thinks that the clearance rate for murders is really high. In reality, it's like 50 to 60%. 40 to 50% of murders go unsolved. But it's even worse than that, really. Because that only includes murders where an investigation started. If the person just became a missing person, it's not figured in at all. Let me ask you this. Going by stereotypes, who is most likely to be able to make a body disappear? What do they look like? What do they sound like? Me, right? I mean, let's be honest. Hillbillies, rednecks. I mean, that is what it is. Those are the people that are most likely to be able to make a body just disappear. And, you know, when you bring this up, what you get is, well, you know, you're saying all of this, but it's in their culture, it's in their music. That's the one that always follows it up. You know, I learned a thing or two from Charlie, don't you know? You better stay away from Copperhead Road. Steve Earle. Now, granted, he is outlaw country. This is not mainstream. That song is about bootlegging pot fields to kill DEA agents. It's really what it's about. So you can't count him out because he's not really mainstream. What about said he found some tracks. He went up there looking and he never come back. That's Montgomery Gentry. Pretty mainstream. Not just as a talking about murdering somebody. Criminality, there it is. It's throughout country music with you in that tarp because Earl had to die. Mainstream. Now I know country music is on them because they spoke out against a Republican, but it was there. Just take it to the knee, or take it to the swamp, or take that rascal out the swamp, knock him to their knees, and climb to a stump with the rattlers and the bugs and the alligators do the rest.
My family, my head didn't stun you.
Yes. Okay. So we say music is the universal language, right? And we can tell our story through music. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. You know, and I'm never really speechless, but one of the things that I immediately thought of was when DeSantis actually told the state of Florida not to monkey up the election. So that's a dog whistle there. So I began to think about songs like that, Charlie Daniels, right? all of those things. It just opened my eyes to the subliminal messages that are in there, and that that are being ingrained. And so when we talk about like values are taught or caught and not taught, this is exactly what we're talking about. People don't grow up and say, I'm going to be a racist, right? People don't wake up and saying, oh, today I'm going to go out and I'm going to take a life, right? So these are things that are being embedded in the community, and to make people believe that the black man is a threat. And don't let an educated black man be in the room, because now you're truly a threat. So and it goes both ways when we talk about music and culture, and I speak about this all the time to my son about the music that you listen to. And sometimes if you just listen clearly, then you can understand the undertone. And even for me, I can understand how he's feeling. So whatever music he's listening to that day, son, what's wrong? How's it going? You okay? And just to know that these messages have been in songs all of these years is unbelievable, to say the least. And no one has had the gall to call them out on it. No one has given it a second thought, and everyone thought it was okay. I'm sure every karaoke party with the words on the screen, it was sung, and everybody had a good time, but us, because we knew those songs were about us. So that's another sobering, Erika. You're really hitting us hard today. So wow.
You know what? That's good. And I want to hit the community hard, because I want us to be empowered with facts and information so that we can begin to make our own decisions. One thing that has happened is that a false narrative is being put out there that Black people do not like law enforcement. That is not the truth. Black people are actively seeking to join law enforcement. Black people are seeking to join the military, and Black people are business owners. And so we don't naturally hate the Republican Party in itself. However, these are the concerns that we have, because there are systems out there that covet abuse. Okay, and racism at the end of the day is abuse. Okay, and if you don't have a system that blocks a systematic abuse of any kind, whether it's against Blacks, whether it's against Asians, Hispanics, women, the elderly, if your system is allowing abuse to flourish, then you have a broken system, and you have a system that will prey on those who can actually cause your system to thrive. And so that is the real issue when it comes to racism. Okay, and so I don't want to take us too far off track. I want to attack the idea of dog whistles. Where do you stand on the idea of dog whistles, and do you have any examples that you are aware of, Andrew?
That's a good question. I have heard of this term. I have not invested a lot of time into it because I'm always the type of person that I like. If it doesn't make sense to me, then I'm going to question it. And I think that that's what we lack is not being able to actually question things and figure out what the undertone is. So I'm not sure. I know that this video really didn't sit well with me, but it gives me some points to actually do a little bit more research, so that way I know when people are actually talking about me in my face, and I want to make sure that I'm aware of that. But this was definitely insightful. I will say that.
That sounds good. Jerry, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think this loops back to the Atwood film, because that little Atwood clip is saying just exactly that. Well, let's not use the N word, and let's not talk about race. Let's talk about cutting taxes, and it will lead to, these people are taking advantage of social programs or whatever. And so I think those two tie together very, very well. That's exactly what Atwood was saying at the very beginning, only was very candid at the beginning of saying it is about race, and then kind of and hide it by using a dog whistle. And so I think it's a perfect match, those two films.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kim, I want to throw this to you, and this is why. Because you work in a profession where people are tasked to heal us, but there is overt racism and covert racism in the healthcare community, not just with in a systematic way, but in a direct patient care way. Last time you shared with us a story where a nurse did not want to give good care to a Black patient. At the same time, I know that Black healthcare professionals actually experience racism. So can you connect the dots on how dog whistles and patient care and just the healthcare system fits together with racism?
Right. Well, unfortunately, in healthcare, it's a little bit more blatant. So, for example, from colleague to colleague, you have managers that crack down heavily on their African American staff. So, say, for example, we are allotted shorter breaks. If we call out sick, we are scrutinized more so than our Caucasian counterparts. Physicians are more inclined to listen to recommendations from Caucasian nurses as opposed to African American nurses. When it comes to the care that we receive in the healthcare setting, unfortunately, African Americans, we have a lot of comorbidities, and that is why COVID has impacted our community more so than any other race. So because of that, we are either denied treatment, we might not receive the best treatment that will aid in our recovery. And then also we receive racism from patients as well. You have patients that refuse to have an African American nurse or an African American physician. So we receive it from both ends.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, this has been an excellent conversation, but I think we've come full circle. I could certainly keep going with this, and we'll pick this up next time because I think we're at a point where we want to talk about criminality and the view of criminality and systematic racism, and connect that with white grievance as well. I'll give one of you a last word here. I will start off with Andrew. It'll go to Kim, and then we will do Jerry, and then Tony, you will end us. So, Andrew, start us off, please.
With last words, right?
Last words, yes.
Yeah. I would say at the end of the day, all of us have to be in a position where we do some internal healing, and sometimes that requires us to cut out a lot of things that we've allowed to be too comfortable within oneself. And I think for Black people, we've been sacrificing. For people of color, we've been sacrificing for way too long. And now that we're saying that we've had enough, a lot of white people are now on the defense, and because they feel as if we're removing some of the power that they've held for far too long. But in fact, I would say to them is that if you're not being anti-racist at this point, then you're a part of the problem, and that you have to do that self-evaluation in oneself in order to actually find enlightenment and to understand the struggle that we've been dealing with for literally centuries. And if you are offended by the things that are shifting the atmosphere in a sense that have been going on over the last couple of months, then I would ask yourself why. Why are you holding on to a lot of the things that you really need to let go as an individual? Why is it that we are not able to live and thrive as equals, within in this world. And if you still feel as if that you cannot give up on the things that you feel are not racist while other people deem them to be racist, then guess what? Enjoy the rocky road ahead, because we have plenty of time, plenty of experience that we've been holding on to, and our ancestors have been holding on to rectify what is ahead. And there is only one direction we're heading, and that is up.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Kim, what's your last word?
Well, first, Erika, thank you for this initiative. I think this is a great way to bring awareness to the community. And I'm really feeling hopeful about change. And the reason why I say that is because I think with Black Lives Matter movement, we see people of all races and ethnicities, protesting and doing podcasts like this and donating to the cause, whereas you didn't see this back in the 60s and 50s. And also, hopefully, in the next couple of months, fingers crossed, we will have a female VP of color. And I know Camilla Harris, she's very passionate about equity and just, making a change for people of color. So I'm feeling hopeful. And yeah, as long as you keep doing these Epic Understandings programs, I would love to be a part of it. So thank you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Jerry, what say you?
Well, I think, Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I feel like that's where we are right now, because I feel very much today that we are kind of like this conflict that was existing between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, where Martin Luther King had worked for years and years and said, we need to do this peacefully. It takes time. We have to do it. And finally, Malcolm X came along and said, how long can we wait? We can't, and it's kind of it's the time. And that feels like a little bit where the Black Lives Matter movement is right now, of saying we've tried to be patient, and there's a point in time when patience is ridiculous and we can't keep having our people killed on the street for no reason other than color. And we need to step up and say, now's the time for change. And so I fully support the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think it's time, and I think it's what people needed to open their eyes to really see what's happening and to recognize it is no longer time to wait and be patient. It's time to get there. And Erika, you know me, I'm not a country western fan like that last guy. There was a time when Tupac had said you can come to a door and you can knock on the door and say, let me in there, let me have something to eat. And nobody opens the door, and he knocks again, and he knocks again, and he knocks again. And pretty soon later, he's going to kick down the door and say, give me something to effing eat. And that's where we are. We reached that point.
Absolutely. And, Jerry's no stranger to Tupac. He is an avid fan. Just look him up and you will find that he even celebrated a few public birthdays with Tupac. And he has skin in the game. Tony, what is your last word?
Well, I don't know if I can up with Jerry with that one. So, definitely just we're at a very pivotal point in our lives in the nation. And, just these conversations must turn into action. And it's going to take all of us. So, Erika, definitely thank you, and Marco, for this platform. Thank you to all the panelists for being on here. Really appreciate it. And just want to say to the viewers that, if you see something, say something. It's important that you all do your part, because this is the only way that we continue to see the momentum that we're having. And as Andrew said, we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So technically, we're just getting started, and there's more to come. And I know more Epic Understanding conversations. So thank you for putting this together.
Absolutely. Viewers, I want to thank you for tuning in with us to this program. I want to challenge you. First of all, don't let us get away with anything. Hold us to account on what we say and what we do. Investigate the things that we have shared with you today, and hold us accountable, because we are asking you to do the same thing that we are doing. We're investigating our leaders, we're investigating our voices, and we're actually challenging you to become a thought leader in your community. And I thank you for being with us today. I also want to thank my illustrious guests. Thank you, Jerry, for spending time with us and being a resident expert and sharing your point of view from government. Thank you, Andrew, for bringing your wide variety of expertise and skills. I know you deal with a lot of Fortune 500 companies and have really dug deep into the corporate setting. And then I also want to thank you, Tony, being our diversity inclusion experts. I know that you work with several Fortune 500 companies. And then also, Kim, I want to thank you for being our healthcare expert in giving us a point of view and a view into what's going on in the healthcare community. Because I have to tell you, every single thing that we are doing is affecting our mental health, and our mental health affects our physical health. And so we want to understand how all of this is intertwined. The last time we talked, one of the big issues was forgiveness. And so I want to put that out there again. The Navy officer quickly put out an apology. Okay, and I'm sure he was looking to be forgiven. I wanted to attack the idea of forgiveness in itself, not meaning to break it down, but I want to break it apart. There is the idea of personal forgiveness. I forgive you for doing this thing to me. But then there's an idea of corporate forgiveness. And that means you don't have to pay for your crime. We as a society are no longer holding you accountable. And in systems where abuse thrives, there is a lack of accountability simply because the person is allowed to say, I'm sorry, and then it is swept under the rug. I'm asking us not to do that anymore. Let's believe that abuse is a real crime and it needs to be paid for. Thank you all for watching, and join us again for another episode of Epic Understanding. Bye-bye for now.
Well, final word.
Oh, final word!
Yeah.
Final word! So?
Okay, I turned myself off, which is good. Well, I was watching the calendar, I think 9th of September, because on the 16th, it's my niece's birthday. So I see. And also, I want to invite all of you to keep in touch with this Facebook group so we can keep the conversation meanwhile, which will be good. This video is there, so for those of you who want to watch it again, or if you want to share it, it will be great. And also, I will share on the group, on our chat group, the YouTube link for this video for you to share it, because I think it's okay. And I'm inviting all of you to keep in touch and to see you next month. And thank you all to coming to join me here in Portugal. I think it's important also to join the efforts to struggle against this stupid thing, which is racism. Okay, so bye for now. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Nice to meet everybody.
Bye.
All right, you as well.
Yeah.